not be able to plug in, turn on, and cop out. You will not be able to lose yourself on Skag and skip out for beer during commercials because the revolution will not be televised.
Welcome everyone. We're just going to wait a few minutes before people come in.
So hang tight. Xerox in 4 parts without commercial interruptions. The revolution will not show you pictures of Nixon blowing a bugle and leading a charge by John Mitchell, General Abrams, and Spyro Agnew to eat hog maws confiscated from a Harlem sanctuary. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be brought to you by the Schaefer Award Theater and will not star Natalie Woods and Steve McQueen or Bullwinkle and Julia. The revolution will not give your mouth sex appeal. The revolution will not get rid of the nubs. The revolution will not make you look 5 pounds thinner because the revolution will not be televised, brother. There will be no pictures of you and Willie Mae pushing that shopping cart down the block on the dead run or trying to slide that color TV into a stolen ambulance. NBC will not be able to predict the winner at 8:32 on report from 29 districts. The revolution will not be televised. There will be no pictures of pigs shooting down brothers on the instant replay. There will be no pictures of pigs shooting down brothers on the instant replay. There will be no pictures of Whitney Young being run out of Harlem on a rail with a brand new process. There will be no slow motion or still life of Roy Wilkins strolling through Watts in a red, black, and green liberation jumpsuit that he has been saving for just the proper occasion. Green Acres, Beverly Hillbillies, and Hooterville Junction will no longer be so damn relevant, and women will not care if Dick finally got down with Jane on Search for Tomorrow, because black people will be in the street looking for a brighter day. The revolution will not be televised. There will be no highlights on the 11 o'clock news and no pictures of Harry armed women liberationists and Jackie Onassis blowing her nose. The theme song will not be written by Jim Webb or Francis Scott Keys, nor sung by Glenn Campbell, Tom Jones, Johnny Cash, Engelbert Humperdinck, or The Rare Earth. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be right back after a message about a white tornado, white lightning, or white people. You will not have to worry about a dove in your bedroom, the tiger in your tank, or the giant in your toilet bowl. The revolution will not go better with Coke. The revolution will not fight germs that may cause bad breath. The revolution will put you in the driver's seat. The revolution will not be televised, will not be televised, will not be televised, will not be televised. The revolution will be no rerun, brothers. The revolution will be live.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. I'm Gaya Sriskanthan. I'm a member of Labour International CLP and Forward Momentum candidate for Yorkshire and Humber, North East, Cumbria, Scotland and International. Never gets easier saying that. Thank you all for joining us this evening. This week has been such a gut punch for socialists and the Labour Party. The spurious sacking of Rebecca Long-Bailey has left all of us considering, just heartbroken and considering whether the party is still a place for us. And the new leadership continues to distance itself from Labour policies that we members have organised and worked for over the last 5 years. So we thought it was really important to call this meeting this evening to explain why we as a campaign to transform Momentum, and with candidates who aspire to lead Momentum into this new era, believe that socialists should stay in the Labour Party, and to set out a plan why we as a campaign to transform, we just got some feedback there. So, we should stay in the Labour Party and set out a plan for how we can turn things around and Momentum's role in that. Jeremy Corbyn shot to victory in 2015 when we least expected it. But if we're honest, we weren't fully prepared. We can't forget how far we've come as a movement. We must remember that the Labour left is so much stronger now. We have the Socialist Campaign Group of left-wing Labour MPs, which now makes up a sixth of the PLP, a much higher proportion than before 2019, and could be organised into a really powerful force. Many trade unions affiliated to Labour remain aligned with the Labour left on many issues and have a large block vote in the NEC and at party conference. Since 2015, the left has developed a detailed, brilliant programme to build working class power, generate community wealth, and take on the climate crisis. These ideas are not only popular with Labour members, but also with large sections of the public too. Importantly, Labour is still the home to hundreds of thousands of socialists who share our vision for social change. We can remain a major political force in British politics, leading in the Labour Party, organising in our communities, and winning support for socialist policies. But we can only use our power if we get organised. We believe that momentum can play a major role to unite and organise the left, but to be prepared for the challenges ahead, momentum needs to change. That's why we launched Forward Momentum several months ago, putting grassroots-led democracy at its heart. And we are proud that many of the issues our campaign has put on the agenda have dominated the debate in this NCG election. With the input of thousands of Momentum members across the country, we have developed a plan to refound momentum. Our 5-point plan calls to unite the socialist left and transform the Labour Party, refound momentum and put the members in charge, build power in our workplaces and communities, give more control to groups, regions and nations, and to campaign for a just and green response to COVID. So today we are joined by a range of speakers who reflect the diversity of our movement and of our campaign to discuss the way forward across a number of levels and what we need to do in the short to medium term to deal with the difficult situation that we're in. So first up, we'll be joined by Labour MP for Hayes and Harlington, John McDonnell, who will be talking about what happened this week with Rebecca Long-Bailey and what the left can do in Parliament to resist a rightward drift. Then we'll be joined by the FBU West Midlands Regional Secretary and the Forward Momentum candidate in the Midlands and East region, Andrew Scattergood, who will be talking about the crucial upcoming NEC elections and what the left needs. Secretary and the Forward Momentum candidate in the Midlands and East. From the Labour MP for Nottingham East and Forward Momentum candidate in the Public Office Holders category, Nadia Whittome, who will discuss accountability of public office holders, including open selections and the relationship between the SCG and the movement. Next up will be Jen Forbes, who was the parliamentary candidate for Truro at the 2019 election and is a Forward Momentum candidate in the South East and the South West region, to talk about how the left can make progress within the party. Then we'll hear from Phil Clarke, also a Forward Momentum candidate in the South East and South West region, and a teacher and member of the National Education Union's National Executive. Phil will be talking about the role momentum can play in supporting unions to fight back against the Tory COVID response. Then we'll be joined by Asad Rehman, a long-time anti-racist campaigner, who will be addressing Labour's failings on anti-racism and how momentum can support the demands of Black Lives Matters movement and racial justice organisations. Then we'll hear from Tracey Hylton, who is a Forward Momentum candidate in the North West and Wales region and the Vice Chair of the PCS Union's Black Member Committee. She'll discuss BAME organising within Labour and Momentum. Our penultimate speaker will be the Labour MP for Liverpool West Derby, Ian Byrne, who will be talking about how we can root our movement in working class communities. And last but not least, we will be joined by Christine Howard, who is a councillor in Sefton, Merseyside, a member of the steering group of the World Transformed, and a Forward Momentum candidate in the Public Office Holders category, who will be talking about building a councillors network and a socialist strategy for local government. So thanks again so much for joining us tonight. And I will now put you in the good hands of our first speaker, John McDonnell.
Hi, thanks for inviting me along. Let me just take you through some of the events surrounding Becky Long-Bailey's sacking, because people need to know what happened on that one. It was interesting, really. Becky, as you know, just to get the sequence of events so everyone's aware of this, Becky retweeted an article about Maxine Peake, an interview. Maxine Peake's a friend of Becky's and one of her constituents, and is a stalwart socialist who's campaigned for us and worked with us for quite a while, who I think deserves maximum respect. Becky retweeted an article, had a quick read of it and then retweeted it. Then was contacted by a representative of Keir Starmer's office to say there were problems with part of the article, one sentence in it, which related to the reference to the death of Mr. Floyd and the Israeli security services training of involvement. Becky it was explained that some would construe elements of that as possibly anti-Semitic. Becky basically said, fair enough, I can understand if there's a concern out there. I'm happy to put a statement out, making a correction, explain their view, and that's exactly what she did. In fact, she agreed the wording for that correction with the Labour leader's office and staff, and they put that out. That seemed to resolve the matter. What then happened is that the leader's office came back and insisted that the tweet, Becky's tweet, be taken down altogether. And so Becky argued, well, just put the point really that if we are taking it down, we need to put a statement out explaining why, because if it has caused concern for people, fair enough. But the most important thing about all of these issues is that you explain what the issue is, and maybe everyone could learn from it. And I think that's a fairly reasonable request. What then happened is that was denied, so Becky asked for a discussion with Keir Starmer, and when he did contact her, the decision had already been made effectively to force her to stand down. I think it was an extremely overreaction to the situation. I think Becky had done everything asked of her, agreed the statement that was originally put out, and simply wanted to ensure that if there was any further action, there was a press release set out explaining why. And I don't think that was unreasonable by any means. And I think the sacking of her was, my own view, is unacceptable, and I made that clear. The Socialist Campaign Group met, we had a discussion, and we sought a meeting with Keir Starmer. We held that meeting. I won't go into a blow-by-blow account, but explain the situation, that step by step. First of all, that my view, I explained, I didn't think the statement that the tweet that Becky put out was anti-Semitic, and basically said if we are, a number of us have campaigned about the concerns we had about the involvement of the Israeli security services or involved in any form of training of other police services, because the Amnesty International report, USA, made it clear that these organisations had a record of human rights abuses. Where Maxine Peake got it wrong was the specific reference to this technique of kneeling on people's faces and heads in the training of the USA police forces. I don't think the USA police forces need any training they've got a history of killing black people anyway, to be honest. But I've worked on the basis that the Israeli security forces have been abusers of human rights, and that's why we've campaigned not to have materials sent to them from this country that could be used in that abuse. And in addition to that, that's why we have supported the amnesty campaigns in the US not to have them involved in training police services, because we've seen too much militarization around the way in which policing has taken place, particularly in the US, and Israeli security forces are exactly the example of that. Anyway, we can argue the case, but I raised it with Keir Starmer and said we thought it was complete overreaction. And what should have happened is there should have been a proper meeting and discussion with Becky. And then if action needed to be taken, it needed to be thoroughly explained to people. We urged him to meet with Becky and reinstate her. That hasn't happened. So I am bitterly disappointed. I've spoken to Becky on a few occasions. Her view is she's saddened about what happened. She did her best to ensure that if there were any difficulties, they were properly resolved and properly explained so that people could move on. And her view now is that, she's out of the shadow cabinet, and this is typical Becky Long-Bailey. Her first statement is about making sure that she continues on as a socialist, campaigning for particularly the issues that she's led on, which is about the green industrial revolution, tackling climate change, and also tackling poverty, particularly poverty effectively being exacerbated by the denial of resources into education for working class kids. So bravely she'll be out there campaigning again with all of us and working incredibly hard. And I have nothing but respect and admiration for her, and none of that has been dimmed. I really was concerned this morning. I opened the media and quite clearly there's been a briefing operation gone on against her across all the media if you look at it. And again, where I said we don't want to be returning to the days of Mandelson and Campbell and McBride and others, where anyone who was seen to be stepping out of line, there was a briefing operation in the media to denigrate them, and that looks as though that's happened today. And we have to ask questions about where that's come from. I'm quite angry about the whole situation. Yes, Socialist Campaign Group have made representations. We've done the best we can in those representations. We've done it in a way which actually has been civil and straightforward, not in any way divisive. And when we met with Keir Starmer at the end of that meeting, we asked him to contrast the way in which the Socialist Campaign Group behaved civilly and in a comradely fashion in the discussions with him in a constructive way, with the way in which some members of the Parliamentary Labour Party treated Jeremy Corbyn over the last 5 years, which in some meetings was an absolute disgrace. Anyway, we move on. Becky's view now, I've spoken to her argument is that we move on now and we move on to campaigning for what we believe in. And what we believe in is transformation of our society, and the pandemic and the potential recession that's coming up now means that actually that transformation is needed even more than it was before only a few months ago. So therefore what we've got to do now, and it isn't just about mobilizing the movement overall to defend the manifestos of 2017, 2019. I think many of us think we've got to be much more radical than that. And so therefore it is about building a debate and discussion within our movement about the vision that we want for that new society, how we claim the future now, and then developing that into a socialist program that we can campaign around the individual elements of, supporting those who will be engaged in the coming struggles, particularly as a result of the recession, but then also making sure we create a climate of opinion that so wins the argument within the Labour Party and our wider movement and community that then forms the basis upon going into the next general election, whenever that comes. And I think we've got the potential to do that. And exactly as the chair has said, when Jeremy got elected leader, it came as a surprise, not least to him and me. We didn't expect that to happen in the way it did. And in some ways, there's been a debate between Aaron Bastani and Joe Gingden about this on Twitter, which I found interesting, even though they're having a pop at me every now and again. The debate is actually, Jeremy took the leadership and leapfrogged what would normally happen in building up towards that, which is building the movement, and building a movement which was fully aware of the analysis of society that we had developed a program, and then you elect a leader to implement it. That was leapfrog. So what we desperately were trying to do from 2015 onwards was to try build that movement, get a policy program in place that that really enthuse people, and then when we go into government, implement it. I don't think we did enough, and that's why I think Aaron and Joe Gingden's criticisms of all of this, including me, are right. We didn't do enough about building that movement. Yes, we created momentum and it's been a tremendous success, but we need to go much further than that. The movement needs to be much bigger, much more inclusive, but also it needs to be based upon really a depth of knowledge of our understanding of our society. That means political education. That's why I welcome the initiatives like the World Transform. And although it might feel tough at the moment, actually, I think we're most probably going into the most exciting period now of building that movement. So the job of momentum, and that's why these elections for momentum and supporting forward momentum is so important, we've got the chance now of using momentum as one of the vehicles that can build that movement, which is based upon a sound understanding of society and that helping us develop the program, the policy program that, again, we can campaign around, so that when someone plants a flag in the ground around an issue, for example, like the renters campaign to prevent the evictions, but also to get some form of amnesty on with regard to rents, prevent any debts being incurred. When someone plants a campaign around that, we can then move the whole movement behind that campaign. And there'll be many of them. The BA workers that are being sacked at the moment by a brutal regime in that company, and the same in P&O. The people who are being forced back to work in unsafe working conditions, and we may even have another peak and spike in the coronavirus pandemic as a result of it. That's where we've got to be. We've got to be using momentum to build the movement that supports these individual campaigns, support people as they go into those struggles, but also doing it on the basis of how each one of them is linked to understanding society and the changes that we need and the program of implementation of that changes that we need itself. So yeah, it's been tough. Of course, it's been tough, so the loss of the election and since then. But I think what's really lifted my spirits all the time is everyone I speak to is angry about different issues, angry about Becky being sacked, but actually determined that that won't deter us in any way. That will build, and will build this movement much stronger, much more thoroughly than we have in the past, and in that way laying the much firmer foundations for as we go forward. I'll do everything I possibly can to support that. Socialist Campaign Group, as actually is the chair, so Socialist Campaign Group of MPs now has a greater proportion of the Parliamentary Labour Party working together as a team, and also with, I have to say this, a new generation of extremely talented young MPs that have come into Parliament this time round, which I think we can be extremely proud of achieving that breakthrough. So we'll be with you all the way through, but momentum has got to be key to this. That's why having the forward momentum candidates from that slate elected is absolutely key. In these last hours before the closure of votes, etc., closure of the polls, we've got to make sure that we encourage everyone to vote into the forward momentum team. And as I say, then momentum then becomes that real vehicle for supporting in this coming period. Thanks, Chair.
Well, thanks everyone for attending tonight. I think it's great to see such a fantastic turnout. So I'm Andrew Scattergood, I'm an FBU rep and an NCG candidate, and tonight I want to talk about the NEC elections. But I want to start by saying that I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that we find ourselves in the midst of one of the most crucial and important times for the left in perhaps a generation. Now, in recent weeks, but no more so than in recent days, as John has just spoken about, the attitude to the left that Starmer has adopted is now clear for all to see. It absolutely pains me to raise the outrageous actions of a Labour leader when all we want to be doing is focusing our anger on the Tories and their horrendous policies and incompetence. Yet when we have a Labour Party who runs the very real risk of becoming void of any class consciousness and reverting to the days when Labour saw people like organised firefighters as the enemy, then we must raise our voices and organise to oppose this. From Starmer's backtracking on policy to his adoption of frankly bizarre and right-wing policy such as supporting 10-year prison sentences for graffitiing, to his scandalous treatment of Rebecca Long-Bailey, we need to collectively stand up to this and send a message that this will not be tolerated, that this is factionalism at its most brutal, and that those of us on the left, the socialists and trade unionists, will do everything in our power to prevent the Labour Party from turning its back on the unions and returning to the days that Labour refused to back the very people they must represent, the working class. And we can send one of those messages loud and clear in the form of a victory for the left in the NEC elections, vital in ensuring that we have a voice at the table to hold the leadership to account. There are huge challenges ahead, and these challenges will be all the more difficult to take on if we have a repeat of the disastrous by-elections earlier this year, which, let's be frank, were caused by division and confusion on the left, including, I have to say, a lack of leadership needed to win the members' confidence. To stand any chance of not having a Labour leaks whitewashed, to stand any chance of not having a purge of socialists, to stand any chance of not having a ruthless all-out attack on the left, we must rally behind a united left slate and sweep the NEC elections. But although there is much to be disheartened about, there is also much to be positive about. We have many good socialists in this party. We have realms of talent and leaders, some of which we've seen burst onto the scene during these NCG elections. We have plenty of people who are more than able to hold their own on the NEC and to make the impact we desperately need. And that does include some incumbent members of the NEC who have been doing a brilliant job under very difficult circumstances. The talent on the left is not the problem. The methods of selecting them are. We now, more than ever, need a united left slate that is transparent in its selection and inspiring in its outcome. A slate of solid socialists that we know will fight at every corner. Now the big question is, how do we do that? Well, firstly, we don't leave the party and we fight to keep socialists from leaving. We do not give anyone the satisfaction of us leaving. So my message to anyone out there thinking of leaving is this: stay, fight with us, and together we will overcome. We also have to cut the nonsense. The less factional rivalries and personality politics must be squashed. It's something that has done us great damage, with friendships and careers put before members' interests. We need to prioritise unity, strategy and selecting the best NEC candidates possible. If we want to produce a slate of confidence and principle that works in the interests of us, the members, then there is no room for selection by backroom deals. And once this has been achieved, and it will be achieved, comrades, then it is the time to rally around that slate with everything we have. We put our differences aside, our concerns aside, we become campaigners for the slate, and we make sure we get the vote out and we win. Now, the next few weeks, months and even years will not be easy, but I don't feel disheartened or disillusioned. I don't feel we're beaten or finished. I feel positive and full of optimism. Look at the fantastic turnout we've got tonight. We have an opportunity to rebuild the left better and stronger, to put right the mistakes we have made, to organise members more robustly and efficiently on the foundations that Corbyn built. So let's not squander the coming weeks. Let's unite. Let's pick ourselves up. Let's seize this opportunity to show we are not going anywhere. We're here to stay, and that our socialism, our determination will never be defeated. Thank you, comrades.
Hey comrades. Oh, Andrew, what an amazing speech. It's massive to follow on from that. When I was first elected to Parliament, it felt like such an alien place. It felt like a place that wasn't for me. I was an activist before I got there. I was a hate crime worker, and before that, of course, I was a care worker. But I became an MP, not for myself, not for the prestige or the power or any of the pomp of Westminster, but to represent a movement that is bigger than me, and the movement that made me. From the Uber drivers in Nottingham, the striking delivery riders, from the bedroom tax protesters, from striking teachers, from the anti-racist movements. Because I think that the role of MPs isn't really to lead, it's to be a voice for what's already happening in our communities, and it's to create new leaders. Now I've been an MP for 6 months and I'm standing in the NCG elections for Forward Momentum. It's a position that I don't think should exist. I don't think there should be positions reserved for MPs and councillors, because we shouldn't be telling the movement what to do. The movement should be telling us what to do. Now, I don't think I'm special because I'm an MP. I don't think MPs are special. I don't think that we should have jobs for life. We shouldn't just be electing MPs. We also need to be holding them to account, not just electing socialists, but making sure those socialists stay socialists and don't sell out along the way. And that's why I'm utterly committed to open selection. I'll be submitting myself to open selection every 5 years. So if people think that I've done a good job, my CLP can reselect me. But then over the recent days, we've had mass resignations. People have been asking me, what's the point in the Labour Party? But to be honest, the Labour Party was never about the leadership. It never has been. Not even under Corbyn was the Labour Party just about the leadership. It wasn't about what happened at Labour HQ or about the Parliamentary Labour Party. The Labour Party is about the hundreds of thousands of working class members and people in our communities who are striking, organising in their workplaces, organising in their communities, bringing their communities together, whether that's in rent strikes, whether it's the Black Lives Matter movement, whether it's trans solidarity. That's what the Labour movement is about. I joined in 2013 under Ed Miliband, and people asked me the same questions then. Why are you in the Labour Party? What is the point of the Labour Party? But I can tell you this, since that time, 7 years on from that, we're in a much better place than we were then. We've got hundreds of thousands of members who joined under Corbyn. We've got things like the world transformed. We've got the left media. But if everyone leaves the Labour Party, then all of that is in danger of dissipating, and we cannot just throw away and waste the last 5 years, not just what we did in Parliament, not just inside the Labour Party, but the way that the Labour Party connected to our communities outside as well, and everything that's going on the ground. And that's why Forward Momentum is so inspiring. It's about democracy. It's about grassroots organising. It's about linking together what's happening outside and what's happening in Parliament. Because it's only when we join together the parliamentary wing of the Labour Party and what's happening outside that we can really realise our socialist demands. Solidarity, everyone. Vote for the Forward 24.
Am I on mute now? Okay. So, hello everyone. I'm Jennifer Forbes. I am a candidate in the South and South West region. I was a parliamentary candidate in 2019 for Truro and Falmouth. Like Nadia, I was a member of the Labour Party under Ed Miliband and was organising on the left then. So I am undeterred, and I want to talk to you now about what needs to be done by the left over the longer term. The left no longer controls the leadership, but we can still make progress within the party if we get organised. I think there needs to be two main planks to our strategy: trying to maintain and build on the radical policy agenda through the democratic structures of the party, and secondly, positive action to strengthen the left at the grassroots and through the elected structures of the party. We need to think about conference. We should demand that conference is sovereign and that conference shapes the next manifesto, not just the shadow cabinet. The majority of Labour members still support a radical economic programme, so we can build further support for this amongst the members and the unions to win these battles at conference, like Labour for a Green New Deal did. However, we should be aware that there might be a push to sidestep conference, as Blair did, and be ready for this. In that situation, we need to have power in the CLPs in order to push back on any anti-democratic behaviour by the leadership. This will also tie in with that positive action for position that we need to get amongst the grassroots. So at the heart of the strategy is to build left power in Labour. It must be organising in our CLPs. Too often, CLPs are inward-looking, focused only on building platforms for local office holders. They should be community hubs for organising like we've done in Truro and Falmouth. They should be supporting the struggles of local people, actively trying to bring more people into the party. Building up a base in our CLP strengthens the left to fight in all the other areas. We also need left CLPs to coordinate with each other nationally in the strategy of making clear demands around party democracy. And we can start doing this now, with CLPs demanding to be allowed to run digital meetings. Then we need to have a plan to make sure we have good left influence in the middle layers of the party bureaucracy, so we can have those important decisions that get made on like regional boards, we can have good left influence there. We also need to have a focus on the local elections. Next year we have a bumper year of local council elections. Many left candidates have already been selected for some of these elections, and there will be more selections taking place before May next year. This is a real chance to build up a power base for the left. Christine will be talking more about this later on, and how left councils can also be an opportunity for demonstrating what left power can do, and also a way of community organising and building our base. We also need to think about parliamentary candidates. It's really important that we bring through a new generation of socialist MPs. No more stitch-ups. Local momentum groups should lead on deciding who to support and do so democratically. In the United States, we've seen great young socialists like AOC break through because of their open primary system. When Corbyn was leader, Momentum supported every Labour MP who was running, even, frankly, the rubbish ones, because we wanted to get the project over the line. Now we can focus more narrowly on supporting really brilliant socialist candidates and fighting hard for them to win, like the DSA has done in the US, but on a bigger scale, as we are already starting from a higher bar. In doing this, we can put more resources into these campaigns, and we can start putting elections at the service of the movement, rather than the movement at the service of elections, like the Bernie Sanders campaign did when they used the election campaign to organise workers in key industries who have now joined unions after the election. The next few years will be a test, but also an opportunity to grow and strengthen our movement. We need to be ready to take more of a lead again in the party at the earliest opportunity. Thank you.
Hi there, everyone. My name's Phil Clarke. I'm a candidate in the South East and South West for Forward Momentum. I'm a teacher and I'm elected onto the National Executive Committee of the National Education Union. I'm really, really proud of what our union's done over the COVID crisis. I think we've been at the forefront of fighting against the government, you know, a really callous government, a really incompetent government, a government that went into lockdown too late, which no mess tens of thousands of lives. It's saying, but I don't think I am. It's cost tens of thousands of lives, the government incompetence. And the government decided to try and save face, having made a complete mess of going into lockdown, to try and open the economy up too quickly. And of course, that meant opening schools up too quickly. Now, we decided as a union that what matters is safety first, the safety of our pupils, the safety of our members, the safety of school workers. And despite the slander, you know, we've been all over the right-wing rags and mail, despite the government pressure, despite the government saying they were acting for disadvantaged students, the same government that's smashed Sure Start, the same government that's cut SEM funding, you know, we take no lectures from them on supporting disadvantaged students. Despite all that, our union, and particularly our workplace reps, have firmly put the brakes on reckless school opening. And the government has had to step back, and schools have opened in a far safer, a far more sensible, a far more controlled way than the government wanted. I think the figures for what our union has built speak for themselves. Not just tens of thousands of new members, though we've got them, not just the largest Zoom call in history, we think, with about 20,000 of our members on one at the same time. What's absolutely key is in a matter of weeks, we've recruited well over 3,000 new workplace representatives. And that's where our power and our strength has come from. And the work these reps have had to do, new reps going into negotiations, talking to heads about the reopening, pushing for safety in a context of government advice over schools changing 41 times in 1 week prior to the opening. And we managed it. You know, our reps have made this safer. Our reps have saved lives. Now, I read in the right-wing press again that Gavin Williamson is going to stop going softy on the teacher unions. He's going to get the knuckle dusters out. Well, our union is more ready than ever to take the government on. Our union is more ready than ever to put our pupils first, their safety first, their education first. I think, however, our whole movement through the COVID crisis we're looking at a recession. We're looking at a government trying to double down on austerity. We're looking at a government that will be trying to make us pay for this crisis, and that will come in a tax on jobs, on our pay. It's going to hit renters, and we've got to organise. We've got to organise for self-defence. And I think Momentum has got a huge role to play in that organising. Momentum has shown it can organise and mobilise for elections. We need to be organising and mobilising to build power in workplaces and communities. We need to be supporting Labour members to get active in their unions, in their workplace. We need to be supporting and training Labour members to get active in their communities and fight for renters' rights. This work is not easy. It's not easy to organise your own workplace, but it can't be dodged, and it's absolutely vital. It's vital not just to defend against government attacks, but it's also vital if we ever want to get a radical Labour government. We have to have our own power so we can force the agenda. And the sacking of Rebecca Long-Bailey, of course, it's a blow for the NEU. We were pleased. It was the one ray of light after the leadership election that we got the best of the shadow cabinet in education. And I think the sacking of Rebecca Long-Bailey has far more to do with her standing with us over schools, far more to do with her standing with us over the privatisation of education and against cuts in education. But if we are going to maintain the big leap forward we've had in the Labour Party, a party that implemented academies but is now got as policy a national education service, if we're going to hold on to that, then we've got to organise and we've got to stay in the party. I don't think you can get away from the fact that the Labour Party is part of our movement, and you no more leave the Labour Party when things are bad than you leave your union when your leadership is weak. You stay in, you build power, you fight. That is how we win, and it's the only way we're going to win. Thanks very much.
Hi, comrades. Thank you for the opportunity to join you today. I was wondering what to talk about because I could go on about the whole litany of terrible things about Labour's record on race, and I know many of us fear this moment of the tilt to the right in the party and this argument about the party reframing and a push towards blue Labour and not willing to take on arguments about racism and immigration in the hope of winning back so-called white working class voters, and the complete despair many black members have about the Labour leaks and the failure of the party to respond to the concerns and the issues of racism within the party. But I also want to say, for somebody who's been around quite a long time, I remember when radical black MPs or candidates like Sharon Atkins in Nottingham were deselected by the party, and now we have Nadia elected in that same city. So things are different and have improved. But I want to talk a little bit about our responsibility as socialists. In over 37 years of organising in radical black community and anti-racist campaign, there's two lessons that I've always learned. One, we can only win when we're organised as a community. And two, there's never been a victory that we've had which hasn't also involved socialists in the Labour Party willing to stand up and alongside us. And whether it's been deaths in custody, racist attacks, police violence, we would never have made the progress we've made in all throughout those long, dark years without organised and committed socialists in the party. The most seminal moment in UK politics in terms around racism, which we could say was the Stephen Lawrence campaign and the Macpherson inquiry and the first formal recognition of institutional racism, would not have been possible without having people like John and Diane and the socialist campaign groups and socialists in both the party and the trade unions. And when I look back at all those years, the one regret and the one thing I always think is, I wish we had an organisation like Momentum where socialists could come together, could organise, could put forward a radical programme, and we'll build power for it. And when I look back at these last 18 months, and of course there's plenty to be disheartened about, actually for me the main lesson is that we need to stay organised and fight. We're in this midst of a multiple crisis, right? And these crises can either lead into disaster, capitalism, or a vision for justice. And when I look on the streets and see the hundreds of thousands of people who are standing now on Black Lives Matter, the most sustained mobilisation for anti-racism campaigning for a generation, young, angry, diverse and radical. And we're having the most profound conversation about the legacy of British colonialism, of empire. There is a challenge to us. We have to stop that movement from first being reduced into abstract discussions around diversity or being co-opted like the radical black anti-racist movements were in the 80s were co-opted. And we have to remember that that movement, you know, is internationalist, and make sure that we bring back that internationalism, that when we say Black Lives Matter, the Black Lives Matter everywhere and for all time. And of course, we're in the moment of Corona, and Corona's exposed all of the inequalities around racial, health and social inequalities. But I also think that has begun a profound conversation in this country, just as the hundreds of thousands of young people who marched around climate did when they connected the fight around climate justice to the fight around economic and social justice. But we're going to be in a moment, and we already see it, on the rise of the right, of a resurgent right. The White Lives Matter sort of hashtag and banners that are being forwarded, you know, to me remind me of the echoes of the British National Party's Rights for Whites campaign. And we could see what the far right are doing in terms of organising online as well. And when we look at this moment we're in, we're going to be heading towards a global recession. Half of all workers in the global south are going to be left without work. And we know all of the deep inequalities that neoliberal capitalism has brought. And we know that we're going to head into a UK recession, which is going to be similar to the 80s. And for those of us who lived through those 80s, I'm sure, let me tell you, those were dark and difficult days. And we know that it's exactly those moments when communities face poverty and inequality that the right begins to make inroads. And when we see around the world, whether it's far-right governments from Trump and Bolsonaro, Netanyahu, Modi and Duterte, we see that the far right is organizing at a global level. Its mantra of walls and fences isn't in the nation state. And it's important that we as socialists remember, you know, that on our banners, we don't say workers of England unite, we say workers of the world unite, and that we are the champions of internationalism. But we're going to be moving into a moment of intense political upheaval, greater than the 2008 financial crisis. In some extent, we can say capitalism itself is in crisis. And in this moment of intense political upheaval, there's also a moment of intense political consciousness. And that's what we've got to harness. And that's why we've got to organize, because we've got to have political education that remembers the race, class, gender and internationalism analysis and bring it forward, because that's what our movement needs. We need to build the movement of movements. And we can't simply just say that's just about resistance, because resistance is important, but it's also about having a vision for transformation, a visionary transformation that is both operating at local, national and global level. But more importantly, we have to build power. And that means connecting our party back to our communities. And as Phil and others have said, that means organizing both in the trade union movement, in the party, but also rebuilding the grassroots community organizations that have been ripped out of our communities at every level over a decade in terms of austerity. I don't want to look back to the past. I really want to look to the future. I want to look to what the challenge is for us. And I can say, I'm telling you, I'm more heartened than I've ever been before, because I'm more heartened that I'm standing alongside so many proud socialists in Forward Momentum. And I just remember when I first joined my first radical organization, it was the Asian Youth Movement in 1979. I know probably many of you were not born in that time. We used to have a slogan. We used to say, here to stay, here to fight. And I think that's the slogan for us all in the party, that we're here to stay and we're here to fight. Our politics aren't something that can be ejected and rejected. We are not the ones that can be suddenly sidelined. Our politics are part of who we are, but we as an individual do not have any power. It's only when we collectively organize that we're actually able to fight the systems of oppression. And the movements that are out there require us to be fighting inside the party, to connecting their demands and make sure we amplify them and make sure we build a party that is genuinely anti-racist at its core. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Tracey Hylton. I'm running for Forward Momentum in the Northwest. I'm here to speak about BAME organisation in Labour and Momentum. But before I go into that, we obviously have to address the fact that at the moment, BAME black members are thinking of leaving the party because of the lack of action about the intolerable treatment that our black MPs are receiving, about the issues in the Labour leagues. And part of our thing that we have to do as black socialists is to stay here and put the pressure on to make sure that that is addressed. You have got to be in it to win it. If we go away, then who's going to fight for them? Who's going to fight for us? This has been said a lot recently, and I've always said it. It's not called a struggle because it's easy. And indeed, it is a struggle. And there has been historical issues around BAME black organisation within Labour and within Momentum. We've had BAME Labour, which many people have called tame Labour or lame Labour. Many of us fed into the sort of democracy review as individuals and in branches and within Momentum and other groups. And a lot of those changes are now coming to fruition in the 2020 rule book with the incoming new BAME branches and other equality strands. And there is work going on about establishing the national network. And we have to stay in the party to push to make sure that that becomes what we want it to be. That's actually going to have something that's going to have some strength, that's actually going to have a voice within the party, and isn't yet again going to be a tick list, tokenist measure to say, well, we've got this for the black members. We need the black members to be in this, and we need to be leading what we do forward in that. Absolutely agree with much of what Assad has said. That is one of the ways we need to do that. Now, historically within Momentum, there has been various establishments of black representation which have wilted away for one thing and another, which I don't think it's helpful to go right back on that now. And we do, on Forward Momentum, want to have not just a black structure within Momentum, but across the equality strands. But central to all of that is going to the members and asking them what it is they want. And many of them have said that they do want one, but the development of that will come from what our members want. And that will be speaking to the members and actually going out. What we can do within Momentum is we are not, as some people have said, going to be in competition with whatever is set up within the Labour Party. What we'll be there for is to feed into and monitor and build up the strength of that within the Labour Party. We've got to remember is where a lot of people first coming into the Labour Party, they find a lot of the structures of the Labour Party off-putting, the way the meetings are structured, etc. Within Momentum, we have more freedom and how we can address that, about how people can participate and to lead on the political education. As a trade unionist, I've been going around speaking to the black trade unionists in my union. And there's generations in there don't know about the struggles of the Bristol Board, about Grunwick and everything else. So it's for us to be able to lead on that and to bring that forward. I come from a community organisation background and trade union background. And what we can do, which isn't being done within the Labour movement, is to do practical things that we do in those things, which is to map where the community is and actually go out and see them, you know, actually speak to them, let them know what we're doing and find out what their issues are, and encourage people to get involved with us in that way. We can be a step into the Labour Party, not something that's actually in opposition with the Labour Party. We are part of the Labour Party, we are partners. I've heard some people say that there shouldn't be another structure, but at the end of the day, if people believe that, then let's get rid of Progress, let's get rid of scientists for Labour and everything else. There's always been diversity within the socialist movement. And there is diversity within the BAME communities, because again, there is, at the moment, we seem to be bunched as like we're a homogenous group, and we're no more a homogenous group than women are a homogenous group, or the disabled, or LGBT. So within those BAME structures, we need to make sure there's representation across the diversity of the diaspora and make sure that those voices are heard and push for things such as we have to be clear here within Momentum and the Labour Party. Often there's a lane that we're expected to stay in as the BAME officer. There's specific roles that we should do, and we should be represented as chairs and political education officers and secretaries and everything else, as well as the staff within the Labour Party. And that's something that we need to push for, because right now we need to look at how are we represented within the staff and what kind of roles are we in within the Labour Party. And also around, it differs in some parts of the country. There's quite a volume of BAME communities. In others, there isn't. And what we can do in Momentum is we can link up those members who are more isolated, but from the BAME communities, through the technology that we use now, and to move them forward and to get them involved. I've been contacted by Black Socialist and Labour members in the North East who were trying to see about what's happening in their regional structures. They didn't even know this process had already started in the North West. And we can be a link to that, to those isolated members, to bring them in. But what we need to do is we need to stay here and say that we have an agenda and we won't be dismissed, and we will play our part, and we will push for things where it's appropriate for there to be things such as all BAME shortlists. And if we can move, that's not going to happen. We have to literally be in it to win it. I have to say we have to stay and fight. Don't leave and organise and be visible. And when we get these processes set up, we will be visible, we will be accountable, and we will be making change. And what we need to do is to play the long game, which we have done as self-organised communities for many years. There's many self-organised groups out there that we should be connecting with, and not trying to take over. I'm not trying to lead with them, but to listen to them, to communicate with them, work with them and be their allies. So what we need to do is we need to unite, we need to fight, we need to educate, agitate and organise. Thank you, comrades.
Solidarity from Liverpool, comrades. And firstly, I'd like to offer my complete solidarity to the NEU. What a magnificent job they've done over the last few months, along with Rebecca Long-Bailey, in fighting the government's undue haste to get our children back to school and teachers. So I think they've done an absolutely magnificent job, and I stand alongside them over the coming months and making sure that that 10-point plan is implemented, which ensures that our kids, teachers and communities are safe. I was asked to talk about Fans Supporting Food Banks, which was an organisation we set up about 5 years ago, and I will do in a minute. But you know, my firm belief is that the labour movement and socialism needs to be absolutely rooted and embedded in our communities to give it relevance, so communities can actually see socialism in action, so they can see it actually work on the ground and how it affects their communities positively. And I firmly believe Forward Momentum can actually deliver that, because that was one of the great failings, in my opinion, of Momentum. It didn't do enough within the communities. So moving forward, hopefully this will be addressed, and that's what we need as a movement, and that's what we need as a left movement. We need to be completely embedded in our communities at the very roots, and not just delivering leaflets and used for that sort of conduit. We need to be on every coal face that our community is going to face. Now, just if we go talk about Fans Supporting Food Banks, it was set up 5 years ago between myself, Dave Kelly and Robbie Daniels. I was the Liverpool fan, they were the Everton fans, and it was a direct answer to what we were seeing in our streets regarding food poverty and the humanitarian crisis that's been unrolling throughout many cities and towns across this country from 2010 with the advent of austerity. And it come about when we seen a food bank queue, which was a couple of minutes from my home in Anfield, and I didn't realise it was a food bank queue. We thought it was a queue in the local community centre for the bingo, and then he took us into the back of the room and showed us the food bank and what was actually getting issued to people. So we've been involved in fan activism, using collectivism to fight for cheaper seasons, cheaper ticket prices for fans. That we come away that day and said, well, what can we do to help our communities? And the idea then was Fans Supporting Food Banks, and it was basically a wheelie bin outside both grounds and ask every football fan to donate an item of food. Now, food banks are abhorrent, they should never ever exist, but unfortunately they do, and they're a necessary stick and plaster at the moment while we've got this system and government in place. So from very humble beginnings we started linking out with the community, and we've grew to the fact that where we are now, over 35% of our food distributed from Liverpool food banks comes from the football fans, comes from the collective work of football fans. what we found with fan support and food banks, which is lessons what we can learn as Forward Momentum and as a labour movement, is that building something like that then gives you the ability to move into different spheres. So we've done some magnificent work with the Muslim communities, directly opposed to what the Football Lads Alliance were doing, with spreading hate, spreading division. Where we build bridges, we don't build walls, and we've gone into mosques, we've had food bank collections, we've held a World Cup showing in the mosque when Mo Salah, the Egypt game, which was attended by over 150 people, many who'd never set foot in the mosque before, and it broke down a lot of the, a lot of the thought process within people's minds about the Muslim religion and about the community. And that was the sort of community organising what we're extremely proud of, and it's using football as a conduit for the positive. And from that, we've now got fan support and food banks right across the country. So that collective solidarity has stretched right from Newcastle to London. We've got clubs in London, West Ham, Chelsea, Arsenal. And what's fantastic about that is now football fans, away football fans, used to be feared entering into them towns, clubs. Now we've got football fans actually bringing donations of food into them, into places, and showing collective working class solidarity. And that's something over the last 5 years which we've really built on, we've really pushed, we've really promoted. Again, lessons need to be learned from our movement, that you can reach out across constituencies, regions, and what you need to do is reinforce basic tenets of trade unionism, collectivism, working class solidarity. When people are in struggling communities, we come together. It doesn't matter if you're speaking a Cockney accent, Scouse accent, Geordie accent, Yorkshire accent. Know who your real enemy is. Your real enemy is the people who are actually starving our communities out. And what we're extremely proud of is the fact that the first donation, and you can hear my accent, and you know I'm a Liverpool supporter, the first donation that was given to Manchester United food banks come from Liverpool football fans. And we know your football history, there's an awful lot of rivalry there. Breaking down them barriers has been absolutely huge. Now we're working with Manchester and Manchester City. We've got United and City working together, and it's been a process of collectivism and enforcing the idea about where we are as a community. So hopefully when you hear those songs about Feed the Scousers and people realise in their communities what's actually happening, and what we've done, it was touched on before, the political education side of what we use. So we use football to educate people. We go into schools, we talk about collectivism, solidarity to school kids. We talk about bringing communities together, but we also talk about universal credit, why people are in the situations they are. And it's a fantastic conduit, and we need to use this to educate our class. That's where we need to be moving forward. So I'm extremely proud of what we've done with fan support and food banks, and I'm extremely proud to speak about it briefly and just finish on where we are with regards what we've just come out of COVID. So within COVID, we used our links with fan support and food banks to create 45,000 visors, distribute them across the country from Liverpool. Them links were already set up. And by doing what we did, we got the whole community together making PPE. It's collectivism. It's working class solidarity. It's bringing everybody in to build this movement. And that's what we need to do within our communities. We need to be absolutely rooted. So if someone's in trouble, they can't see, struggling to get a meal on the table, struggling to talk to someone, struggling to get advice. Well, the labour movement, the socialist movement, momentum need to be in the communities and be that voice for the community. Because I think what we've seen over the last period of time is that we can't wait a top-down approach to bring socialism about. Socialism will come from the ground up, and that's what we need to reinforce. We've got an opportunity now. It's going to be absolutely awful the next period with regards to the economy, what we're going to see regarding job losses, what we're going to see regarding poverty. And as I say, it's also an opportunity for people to see that socialism can work. So comrades, I ask everyone is to come together, look into your communities, build something substantial, build something with roots, build something special, and use momentum as a tool, working alongside the Labour Party to make sure that when people need a political party, that they see our movements as the answer and not as the enemy, as unfortunately they have been over the last few years in their perception of it. So I think we can really do something special over the next couple of years. So let's come together, unite, move forward and build something in our communities and build socialism from the ground up, which will be sustainable and which will change the future of this country. Thank you.
Hello. My name's Christine Howard. I'm a councillor in Sefton in Merseyside. I'm a Forward Momentum candidate on the public office holder slate, and today I'm going to talk about building the Momentum's councillor network and our strategy for local government. So I decided to put myself forward to become a councillor because, quite honestly, I got sick of shouting at the telly and I wanted to do something that was actually going to make a difference and make a change. And the most logical starting point for that was where I live in my community. When I was elected, some of my friends made jokes about me being an expert on dog poo and bins and grass verges, because apparently that's all councillors talk about and all they deal with. And other people said, oh, you're going to have a really easy ride because Sefton have got a big majority, a big Labour majority. And that perception of councillors has come from the fact that in some places they're not effective, they're not community leaders, and in other places they're downright invisible. And it's in those places that grassroots campaign groups, activists and unions have stepped up to lead the fight for our working class communities. And we've seen this most recently with the COVID crisis. More than 2.5 million people have signed up to take part in mutual aid groups to look after our most vulnerable community members. In places from Bexley to Medway to the Wirral, unionised refuse workers have secured workplace safety measures and guaranteed sick pay through industrial action. And in Lambeth, it was left to activists to voice concerns for workers who were forced to return to non-essential building sites on the very same day that 1,005 people died from coronavirus in the UK. The thread that runs through those struggles, and many more besides, is that they often take place outside of local government. I'm not saying that those actions shouldn't have been taken, as they were. They're the very foundation of our movement. But instead of always exerting pressure from the outside, we need socialists inside local government joining with grassroots campaigns and unions to lead from within. So if anyone on this call has built or run a campaign or organised within their workplace or has been a leading voice in their community, we're looking at you because we want to find the next generation of socialist grassroots Labour councillors. But that's just the start, right? So at the same time as we build a strengthened left in local government, we want to build on the great work that's already taken place in Momentum on the councillor network and create a centralised resource for councillors to get training or to ask for advice or to share best practice. So whether you're trying to cut through the bureaucracy of local government, or you're a minority left-wing group in a right-wing Labour group, or you want advice on writing and organising around a motion, we want the councillor network to be your go-to. And with that strong support network, socialist councillors will be empowered to push for economic democracy in their local authorities based around the great work that's already taken place. So we've got examples like in North Ayrshire, the community wealth building model for economic recovery after the COVID crisis. We've got the now famous Preston model, and the great work as well that's being done by my fellow public office holder candidate Jamie Driscoll in North of Tyne, where, get this, there's been investment in a Green New Deal, there's no gender pay gap, workers own the supply agencies, there's a People's Bank, and suppliers are held to only being procured if they pay a real living wage. And to tie all of that together, we'll develop collectively a coherent strategy for the left in local government, so that as a councillor network, as Momentum and as a movement, we have a really clearly defined vision for what we want to and must achieve. For too long, too many Labour councils have been run by people who just want to do capitalism but a bit nicer. I've got a vision for socialism within our councils, and Forward Momentum have got the plan to make that a reality. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you to all the incredible speakers tonight, and for everybody tuning in on Zoom and Facebook. It's clear that there are many levels at which we can be working to turn this ship around, but we need everyone involved to make this happen. If there's one thing that you take away from tonight, please remember that there are many of us. We've got the ideas, we've got the people. If we're connected and organised around a common purpose, we will be powerful, and we can't just throw away that power. So please stay engaged. These ideas you've heard are the seeds of the plan to turn things around. So we'll need to discuss and develop our plans as we move forward, but together we can do this, and Momentum is key to this. It is the space for socialists to stick together and to plan our way forward together. Our candidates want to make Momentum fit for that purpose, so if you agree with our plan, then vote for us in the Momentum elections. What's more, convince your friends to vote and stay involved. Use social media to spread the message, but most importantly, get or stay involved with activism on the ground. We hope to meet you there after this election to bring grassroots organising to the forefront of this movement. So take care, everyone. Stay strong, and solidarity.
Lie. My brothers don't die, we just rusty bark. I tell your girl to link me at the coffee shop. Getting freaky in the sheets, we're taking body shots. Then I finish with a facial just to top it off. Ay, my brothers don't die, we just rusty bark. I tell your girl to link me at the coffee shop. Getting freaky in the sheets, we're taking body shots. Then I finish with a facial just to top it off. Ay, you ain't got a clue, let's be honest. I had a couple seasons made a forest. I put in the work and take the profit. Looking at my girl like what a goddess. Thank God. Rule number 2, don't make the promise. If you can't keep the deal, then just be honest. I can never die, I'm Chuck Norris. Fuck the government and fuck Boris, yeah. I'm a villain, killing when I'm barring. Brothers in the hood just like the movie that I star in. Servicing my whip, I phone the boss to bring my car in. I could probably take a trick, but I just wouldn't cause she's jarring. Ooh, I got the sauce. Don't know what you for. Catch me up and slowing in my sliders and my shorts. Chick's trying to get my brother flips to share his thoughts. I think he's trying to tell me I should tell her he don't talk, I don't fuck with her. Yeah, I used to hit it, but you're stuck with her. Man, I wouldn't even try my luck with her. Yeah, let's say I'm bougie. Way too exclusive. Chilling in Dubai, know I get it all inclusive.